Hello and welcome to this special interview here on Counterpoints with me, Melinda Nucifora. Well, US President Donald Trump has called it one of the most consequential bodies ever created in the history of the world. His Board of Peace has been officially launched, promising not only stability in the Middle East, but also an avenue for broader global conflict resolution. For more insight on the role the board will play, we're joined by US Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. Ambassador Huckabee, thank you for your time and welcome back to Counterpoints.
I appreciate it, Melinda. It's great to be back with you.
Let's start with the Board of Peace. Why do you think that this particular board can be a stabilizing force in the Middle East where other groups and other institutions may have failed?
Well, this is the first time we've seen anything this comprehensive that brings together people from across the political and even geographical spectrum. It's historic and epic in its very makeup. It's even more historic in its ambition, in the idea that you're going to bring all of these nations together who are going to collaborate on something that is uniquely focused on a region that has been the centerpiece of international attention for the past 2.5 years, and that has been the centerpiece of a very, very difficult war, difficult for the Israelis, difficult for many people who have watched it from afar, and unfortunately, especially difficult for those who forget why the war even happened. And it seems like a lot of people talk about what the future of Gaza is. That's the appropriate thing. But I hope we never forget what initiated it. And that was the October 7th slaughter of over 1,200 people and the taking of over 250 hostages.
Ambassador, there has been some concern from some politicians, from some commentators who are worried that the term Gaza isn't even mentioned in the Charter. Are you concerned, as the Ambassador for Israel, that this will be too internationally focused and that the region that it was set up to stabilise may be forgotten in broader ambitions?
I think it may be a fair concern just looking at it from a distance, but I can assure you that everyone that is involved in it understands exactly why this was created. Maybe it's because there's hope that the model of the Board of Peace can serve as a model for other places around the globe where there have been similar conflicts, similar injustices, similar instances in which a lot of people have been caught up in a war. And so I wouldn't worry too much about what isn't mentioned. I would focus more on what is mentioned, and that is that there has got to be now a real effort to try to disarm Hamas, get the last hostage back, then move very quickly to phase 2 and start building a better future for the people who choose to remain there.
Can you see a situation where the Board of Peace, chaired by the President himself, gives a deadline to Hamas to disarm, gives a deadline to Israel to withdraw their troops? Do you think the Board of Peace will go that far?
Whether it's the Board of Peace officially or whether it's President Trump, I not only can foresee it, I would almost be assured of it. President Trump is a lot of things, but being patient with people who signed an agreement and don't keep it, well, that's not something he's really that patient with. Hamas signed the agreement. Let's never let them forget that. They agreed to disarm. They agreed that they would not have a future in the role of governing Gaza. So for them to violate that, and then to violate the return of all hostages, which they, to their credit, they at least let all the living hostages go, and most of the deceased, but there's still a remaining deceased hostage that's being held. That too was something they agreed to. So they're the clear violators of the ceasefire agreement, and they've signed on to say they would do it. I think you can count on the fact that President Trump will hold them to that.
So you can foresee the President putting a deadline, in 2 weeks, on this date, they must disarm?
Yeah, I don't know what that's going to be, and only he could answer that. So I'm not going to try to speculate. Is it weeks? Is it a month? What is that deadline? I don't know. He will certainly tell us. As you know, the president's pretty good about expressing himself. He's not ambiguous when it comes to saying things out loud that he really believes and things that he sticks by. And I think it's one of the reasons that Hamas should pay attention, because he said consistently since he was sworn in just over a year ago that Hamas has no future there and they've got to disarm. And that was before the ceasefire agreement. He's never wavered from that, never even an iota. So the idea that they're going to somehow wait him out, it's not a good calculation on their part.
Seeing as we're talking about the president, let me put this to you. He sits at the head of the Board of Peace, and he alone has full veto power. Is that fair, that the veto rests with one person?
I would ask this, is there anyone else in the world who could lead this effort and bring it to where it already is? I would say the answer to that is an emphatic no. I can't think of anyone leading any nation, any organization who has the moxie to pull off what he has already pulled off. The agreement at Sharm el-Sheikh itself was something that I think maybe went beyond what people would have ever expected. And that is when you have the entire Arab world all signing that agreement, Israel signing the agreement, even Hamas signing the agreement, no one but President Donald J. Trump could have pulled that off. So I would just simply say, if anyone questions why should he be the head of the Board of Peace, you tell me who should. And I think you're going to have a hard time giving me a name of anybody who would be better suited to serve in that role than he would.
Here on Counterpoints, we've had some very experienced political commentators say to us that this board could eventually kill the United Nations. Do you think that that's a possibility?
I personally couldn't answer that. I don't think that that's the intent of the Board of Peace. In fact, I can say categorically that's never been discussed. No one has ever said, hey, if we really work this right, we'll replace it.
Of course, and the president in his address at Davos said that he will work in conjunction, but he has been very critical of the UN. Can you foresee a time where it rivals, threatens the UN?
I think if the UN is threatened or rivaled, it'll be because of its own incompetence. It won't be because of something that President Trump does. He's willing to work with the UN. He's gone to speak there. He's been very open about that. But he's also recognized that there are UN-affiliated organizations like UNRWA that were collaborators with Hamas. Even on October 7th itself, there's a lot of heartburn, I think, among many Americans and other nations of the world about some of the ways in which the UN conducts itself. So it's the UN that needs to reform. It's the UN that needs to make some serious changes to regain credibility in the world. But if you have let's say a Human Rights Council, and you take advice from Russia or North Korea, you just strain the credibility of the organization. So no, I don't think the Board of Peace was ever intended to be a replacement or to be a rival. It's intended to do what it's stated its intentions are, and that is to bring a global awareness and participation in bringing not only an end to a war, but a real rebuilding beyond it.
Well, you raise Russia there. But eyebrows were certainly raised when invitations were extended to Russia, to Belarus, to join the Board of Peace. Given what you've just said, is it appropriate that Presidents Putin and President Lukashenko are invited to sit on a Board of Peace?
I think, again, the president wants to bring as many people together as he possibly can, hoping that if they are a part of the Board of Peace, that it will have long-reaching implications and maybe lead to points of peace in other theaters, including Russia, Ukraine. Let's hope so. We all want to see that one end as well.
Would you like to see President Putin accept the invitation?
Not up for me. Look, I'm keeping my eyes on the portfolio of being U.S. ambassador to Israel, and I have great respect and genuine sense of confidence in the president's decisions. So far, even when people think they're wrong, they turn out to be right. And this has been my observation for many, many years of knowing him. I often, sometimes even will say, I wonder what he was thinking or what did he do? And then in a few days or a few weeks later, it's like, that was brilliant. What I love about President Trump is that he does not approach things in a conventional and in a traditional political calculation. He asks two questions of pretty much everything before him. Will it work, and will it make things better? He is the ultimate pragmatist. He is not an ideologue. And I tell my friends in the US all the time who want to peg him left or right, I say, you're missing the point. That's not who he is. If he makes a decision, it's going to be based on will it work and will it make it better? If that lands a little left of center, that's not a big calculation. Most political figures are going to start and end within the box of their ideology. So if they're conservative, they're going to say everything we do has to start and end within the center to right horizontal line. He just doesn't think like that. And it's why he's been so successful, because he thinks beyond the expectations of a traditional political figure.
Well, Israel is concerned that this board of peace will make things better. It's raised worries about the invitations, for example, of Turkey and Qatar on the board of peace. Former National Security Advisor Yaakov Amidror to Israel said that it's a strategic error that would strengthen Hamas. Do you share Israel's concerns about their invitation to the board?
One of the things that was made very clear, and President Trump has said it, as have the envoys Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, is that there's an expectation that there will be a difference of opinion in who's on the board and how it's conducting its business. Every member always has the basic right to exit if they choose that it's not going to work for them. But I think the bigger picture is that President Trump is bringing together people that ordinarily wouldn't be together, but the goals are simple. And as it relates to particularly the disarming of those who started this in the first place, and I don't want the world ever to forget, this was not created because Israel did something. This was created because Hamas did something on October the 7th that was an atrocity so unspeakable that had it happened in the United States, it would have been the equivalent of over 40,000 Americans, not just murdered, but massacred and slaughtered. So I think it's one of those moments where Israel looks at this perhaps differently than anybody else in the world. President Trump understands that. He's made that clear. Everyone will make their own decisions about their future role in this.
Mm-hmm. Let's turn our attention slightly away from Israel and Gaza towards other parts of your region. President Trump has told reporters on Air Force One that the US has an armada heading towards Iran. What's he preparing for?
I think Iran will find out when it's time for them to know. The one thing he has said to the Ayatollah that he's continually made clear to Iran, last summer he made clear to them, you're not going to have enriched uranium and you're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They didn't believe him. He proved that he meant it. If he's saying to them, quit killing the protesters, quit slaughtering your own people who believe that they should be having food and water and an economy that works rather than one that gives all of its resources to Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, then the supreme leader, or sometimes I call him the extreme leader, should pay attention to that. Melinda, where I come from, we have a statement, a colloquial comment that says there is no education in the second kick of a mule. Well, what that simply means is if the mule kicks you the first time because you stood behind him, not understanding what the mule could do, and you go and you stand behind him again, you're probably not going to have much education in the second kick of the mule because you didn't get much out of the first one. I would say to the Iranian leadership, you got kicked pretty hard last summer. And President Trump did exactly what he said he was going to do. He's saying to you again, you can choose a better course. I would strongly suggest that the Iranian leaders do that.
Is there underlying in that, you know, when you say Iran will find out when it's time for them to know, is the underlying sentiment then that perhaps President Trump isn't convinced when the Iranian authorities say that they aren't executing the protesters and that they have restored calm order?
I think President Trump is a person who is naturally skeptical when people have a long history of murdering their own people, that he's going to just believe that they've had a change of heart. So he's going to want evidence of that. If he doesn't get it, then I think that will be one of the bases upon which he will make whatever decision he will make. But he alone will make that decision. It won't be made by me, won't be made by anyone here in Israel. It will be made by the President of the United States. And when he makes that decision, it will be one that it will be carried out. But I don't know when, I don't know what. I just know that anyone who does not believe that President Trump makes promises that he keeps, they haven't been paying attention.
Do you think then that people in your region should be preparing seriously for another US intervention?
I don't know that I would say that people ought to be preparing like they ought to be stocking up on water and bread and canned goods right now. I don't think we feel a sense of imminent threat. I'm not sensing that here in Israel. But look, we live in a part of the world that is volatile. There's a fragility, if you will, about what peace looks like on any given day. I think most Israelis went to bed on October the 6th, 2023, thinking life is good. Tomorrow's a religious holiday. It's going to be a wonderful day. Everything changed within a few hours. So people expect that you're prepared for anything. You hope for the best. Nobody's sitting around curled up in a fetal position right now, thinking that the opening salvos of Armageddon are about to happen. People are always on alert, and I think that's just being smart.
Let's, as we wrap up our interview, let's circle back to where we started with the Board of Peace, because part of that announcement, part of that official launch on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos included Jared Kushner presenting a reconstruction plan for Gaza. And in that, it suggested not just stable and economically prosperous Gaza, but a Gaza governed and controlled by Palestinians. Do you think that that sits comfortably with the people of Israel?
As long as there's going to be serious reform within the Palestinian culture and mindset, that's going to be a real key. But that's been true within the Palestinian Authority governed regions in Judea and Samaria. So will they change their textbooks and make it so that children are not taught that it's a wonderful thing to kill a Jew? That's going to be a part of it. Will they stop paying people who are terrorists for having murdered people who are Jewish and conducting all kinds of acts of terrorism? And if they die, will their families stop getting pensions for that? That's a part of the reforms that really need to happen, and I think the expectation is that it will. Let's hope that there's a massive reformation. There is a very different kind of culture that takes root in Gaza, and that, as the fairy tales say, let's hope that we all live happily ever after. That's the hope and the goal. But it's in the hands of the people who will have to make it in order for that to be true.
Well, on that, as we wrap up, one last question to you. If we are to live in that fairy tale of all living happily ever after, what is the first thing you would like to see the Board of Peace do? I know that you don't sit at the head, but if you could advise President Trump on day one, this is the first thing, what would you like that to be?
Well, I'm not sure that President Trump needs my advice. I think all of us, and the president has made this clear, we all want to see Hamas fade from the scene, a disarmed, demilitarized Hamas. They're the ones who are the root of this evil, and it really can't go forward as long as they are still holding weapons and as long as they're still holding the hate and the animosity in their heart toward the people who are so close to them.
Ambassador Mike Huckabee, it's always a pleasure to have your analysis and insight here on Counterpoints. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Melinda. It was always a pleasure to be with you, and I appreciate the conversation.